Okay, Mike, you can start when you're ready.
We'll go ahead and call the Board of Selectmen regular meeting to order, December 8th, 2020, 6 p.m. In attendance is myself, Mike Ergo, First Selectman, Selectwoman Nita Kincaid, Selectman Bob Carlson, Christine Dias, Admin Finance for the town. We have a number of agenda items, and as is practice at our meetings, we will allow public comment on any agenda items as we go through the agenda. I do see that we omitted public comment on non-agenda items tonight, and I do apologize for that. We will rectify that on the next agenda. So, but we will allow comments certainly on each of the agenda items. And what we'll do is move right to the first agenda item. And we do respectfully ask for any comments to be held to 2 minutes in respect for everyone's time. The first agenda item is shall the town of North Stonington, as approved by the Board of Finance, approve an additional appropriation in the amount of $126,860 for milling and paving on Kingswood and Cedar Ridge neighborhoods through steep grant funds. So I know we've talked about this at a number of meetings, and this is basically the amount that we were approved for through steep grant funding. This was a project we were already, planning on doing. And so to have the opportunity to get funds through steep, we knew that this was a multi-year project to try to get all these roads fixed in the two neighborhoods. And this will just help us a little bit more quickly, try to get towards the finish line on getting all these roads paved. So with that, do the selectmen have any additional questions or comments on this topic?
No, I'm good, Mike.
Go ahead, Nita.
Yeah, I was reading the November 9th, not email, but letter to you from Melissa McCaw, secretary. And it says here that you can't have started the project in any way, right? Is it true we have not started the project in any way yet?
Not as not as designed, not on the roads that we submitted as part of this project. That's correct.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to be sure about.
We designated these particular roads as phase 2 of the project. So the stuff we completed last year was phase 1. This is phase 2.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious. Thank you.
With that, if the selectmen have no other comments, I'll ask if there's any public comment. I see a hand raised. Brian Rathman, you are recognized.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I heard about some water breakdown there. I didn't know if after the paving's all done and everything, if there's a water break and they have to dig up the pavement, does the water authority pay to have that repaved on that part? Or will that be the responsibility of the town?
I've always seen the water authority has fixed the paving every time they've had to dig up, and this is no different than what happened even today on Mystic Road.
Okay.
So I believe that's their responsibility.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. Any other comments? All right, seeing no other hands, seeing no other comments, we'll call for a vote. All in favor of basically the motion, which is, we should make a motion in the verbiage of what agenda item number 2 is. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of agenda item number 2, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. 300. Thank you. And that job will obviously, happen next year with the paving plants having, pretty much closed or eminently closing if they're not already.
We do have to fill out we have to fill out our signatures, right? To move this along.
No, we did that as the, that was part of the town meeting call, which that's already happened. So we're good. Was no further action. Tonight was tonight was the last part of the action, so we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, number 3, 298 Norwich Wesley Road updates. I just kind of leaving this on here because there's, obviously a lot of activity between all the wings and everything happening there. So I haven't received back the signed lease yet from Lighthouse. I do expect to receive it back. There's been no material changes from what our discussion was on that. Just on the other part of the wing, just in review, as I had said, I think a meeting or two ago, for the rest of the middle school wing, I'm looking, working with this realtor. So I just have the attorney just kind of giving the blessing on the agreement just to make sure we move that forward in an appropriate way for the town. And then finally, we had a walkthrough last Thursday for interested parties in the 2-story wing, which we had put the RFP out on that. And we didn't have anyone show up, but it wasn't a mandatory walkthrough. So we'll see if we actually get any bids on that RFP. And if we don't, then we'll have to reassess how we're looking to market that or whatnot. But we do have dates out there for that RFP, and those will be close. Those are due this month. So we'll see if we get any bids on the 2-story section of the building. We did meet today, Christine, myself, Peter, Christine Wagner, and Deb talked today just to kind of get our ducks in a row as we move forward next year on kind of a memorandum of understanding between the town and the school on their section of the building. So we'll put that together in writing, just to make sure that's just a little bit more codified as far as like who's doing what, who's responsible for what sections and all that kind of stuff. And the basic understanding of their responsibilities, because I mean it's all the same taxpayer money here. And I think this year, just to remind everyone going into it with the schools section of the building, we weren't sure how everything was going to work, so we just kind of assigned like a bare bones per square footage fee to them of like $1.98 a square foot. If you remember, that was based on conversations we had with Gary. And so I think next year, rather than having any square footage cost associated, we're just going to ask them to pay their portion of the utilities based on the square footage that they use, which seems to be more appropriate and in line with, what we should be doing. And then there'll be some other stuff. So we'll bring forward kind of the highlights of that to the selectmen so you guys can see it. It's that way we have all that kind of lined up as we get into the budgeting. Is there any other questions on 298? At the moment. I don't think I missed anything there. Christine, I miss anything with that? Okay.
That's everything.
Okay. Is there any comments or questions from the public on the 298 Norwich Wesley Road? A number ending in 9339. You're recognized.
Yeah, it's me. Am I
Joe,
muted? Yeah,
That's Superman?
yep. Hey, I just want to make sure the demolition portion we talked about, we're renting out. The taxpayer is not going to get hit with any cost maintaining that. To my understanding, whoever leases it will be responsible for maintaining it and whatever has to be done, correct?
So yes, that's the intent, Joe. I mean, right now, so just to be very clear, and we've said this in a multitude of meetings, there is no funds budgeted for that building right now. However, right now, that building is not budgeted by anybody. So anything this year, there are going to be certain things that the town will have paid for because right now it's an asset that has to be cared for, at least at the bare minimum, until we get people in there. The leases that we're signing, that we're attempting to sign with folks is that, yes, all the onus of upkeep and things of that nature are on them for the most part. There are some There are some things that will be like building maintenance that are to the whole building, that there'll be some random things like that that we'll quantify, but the income that we receive is going to far outweigh any costs associated with the building, because we're not taking on any large capital investments in the building. These are all the intentions that we have. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Is there any other questions or comments? All right. Moving on. Number 4, ethics policy review. So I know this has been on our agenda and Bob was working on that. Bob, do you have any update that you want to share at this point?
So I budgeted last night to hopefully pretty much finish it up, only to be reminded we had a meeting, which I didn't realize we had, and that took a 2-hour meeting, so I did not work on it after the meeting. So I would think I'll be able to pass it out and we'll be able to discuss it at our next meeting. It's going to be in
Okay.
2 forms. It's going to be a code of ethics that I have to look at the other towns, kind of compiling our own, but then I'm going to leave some questions for discussion at the end on things that are not covered in those towns' code of ethics, whether it be, the way that we act in the Zoom meeting, both the public and the elected officials. So, I mean, that's not covered because those code of ethics were done prior to us being on Zoom. So things like that. There was a question brought up to me about participation on boards the other day. If you're on one board, should you be on another board? So I'm going to put those in a question form so we can discuss those the night that we discuss the code of ethics policy. But the large part of it will be done by then. So are we meeting on the 22nd? Is that our next meeting?
We don't have no, we don't. Do we have a scheduled meeting this month? Another one, Christine?
Let me double check one. I thought we did, but we might not.
I'm not opposed if there's stuff that we have to do to scheduling one. We've been very, very busy even through all this, and that's important. So
I mean, the 22nd, which would be the normal night we'd meet, is fine with me, and I could be ready for that if we decide to do that.
Do we have a meeting, Christine?
It's on the calendar on the town website, so I'm gonna say 90%, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that'd be perfect. We can review it then.
Perfect.
Nita, did you want to ask anything or have any comments or questions before we go to the public? If there is any public? Yes, I see a hand raised from the public. Go ahead. Joe Gross.
Yeah, this is just a question with Bob. A few years back, Preston had a group which met with the selectmen from our town. And I'm trying to figure, I think that was part of a ethics group. They had a group set up or something and we had problem getting help, volunteers or something. Or have I got something else mixed up with that? I'm just looking for something to help Bob, that's all.
So there was a couple of meetings with Preston a while back. One of them I was involved in when I was still on the Board of Ed, and that was more about school choice. The one you're talking about, I was not involved in, but I did hear there was some sort of but I think that was on joint sharing services. I think Mike might have been involved in that, sharing municipal services. That wasn't about code of ethics that I know of. It could have come up in the conversation, but I wasn't there. But I do have Preston's code of ethics is one of the ethics I am reviewing, one of the towns I'm reviewing, so.
Okay, then you've been there, Bob. I just thought that I remembered something with them coming down. And
I don't think it was a
couldn't get
code of
anybody-
ethics, Joe. I think it's more on sharing of municipal.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I remember that very well, actually.
Yeah, it was something there. Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the code of ethics discussion? Okay, so we'll look forward to discussing that in more detail at our last meeting of the year.
Mike, what I'll do is I'll try to make hard copies and get them to Christine prior to the meeting, or email them to her prior to the meeting, so then she can get them to you, Anita.
Yeah, great. We'll have it if she has it, or Bailey will send it in the packet for us.
Perfect, thank you.
Meeting. Thank you. thanks for your work, Bob, on that. Okay, so the next thing is ordinance changes discussion. So I sent in your packet some ordinances that, so basically just to kind of back up, a couple of months ago at least, I met with both with Christine, Juliet, and Antoinette to talk about ordinances. I know we kind of cleaned up the land use ordinances really in our first year. So there's really not a lot of work there to be done. In fact, I don't think there's any land use ordinances that have to be addressed right now. There are, we do want to look at the land building fees, but that's not an ordinance. That's something we will discuss at the town meeting as well. But there's some ordinance revisions that I think should be discussed, and there's a fair amount of stuff here to review. And as I mentioned, certainly nothing that we're going to decide tonight, but I wanted just the selectmen to have these to reflect upon. My intention or thought would be, and if you guys agree, that we would have some form of a town meeting, however that looks, in like probably January towards the end, maybe, where we would take up some of this stuff. We have some other items that may need to go to town meeting as well. So I don't know how far you want to get into this tonight, if there's any discussion you want to have on any of it, or if you want to just reflect on it, kind of take it up in more detail at our next meeting. Nita, go ahead.
I'd like to just do a quick, I have already done a quick run through on it, and there's some things that I don't understand. I definitely don't want us to make a decision tonight. I think that's too. But I'm not quite understanding some of this. So I assume, can I just go through it quickly?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can go through them. And before we get into them, if you're going to read through them, just for the public's, so that there's an understanding from the public that's here, like these are things that we would discuss. And then if there's favorability from the selectmen, would go to some level of a town meeting or whatnot, so that the public would actually vote on these things. So go ahead, Nita.
Well, for example, the existing ordinance revisions, which is the first thing and very small, basically that's just fixing it so it's a little bit different than it is right now, correct?
Yeah, so that particular one, the one that I have at the 9.1, right now it's set up, and this is the only one I caught. There could be others like this that allow the Conservation Commission members to be appointed by the first selectman. And it just seems more appropriate to me that the Board of Selectmen should be in charge, should be appointing commission members. So I would change that from first selectman to Board of Selectmen. And the second one is the Municipal Building Committee, which is not a committee we have, but it may be something that just via statute that's just part of what we have in our ordinances. I just said strike established, and change it. The Board of Selectmen may establish, because it's not something we have established right now. So it's just, they're just little things.
Okay, so I don't want us to get into details about these, but when I look at new proposed ordinances for discussion, does it mean that none of these have been in place before, or is it some of these are being changed from what was there before?
Some of them are changes.
Like the Hewitt Farm.
That's new. There's no
ordinance.
There's no ordinance on the books for the
okay.
Hewitt Farm Committee.
Okay.
But there's one in here that refers to something with Board of Finance that would be changing an existing.
Okay. I think it would be important to indicate, if you can, the ones that are brand new and the ones that are being fixed. I mean, I think
the only one that's listed under new instead of existing is the Board of Finance.
Is it? Okay, so everything else here is new.
Yes.
So then my question is, where did the inputs come from?
So all these, go ahead, Christine.
Back in July, because that was how long ago we started this, and then I asked Mike to push it because of the primary election and then the presidential election.
Right.
We had a first meeting. So Antoinette went through all of the ordinances and kind of looked at what she thought was missing based on agendas that get filed through her office, and just the day-to-day that the town clerk does, because she has the most interaction with what really relates to our ordinances. So
Okay,
she looked at commissions that don't have an establishing ordinance. She looked at what other towns have. So she kind of made a draft list of what she thought should be added to it. And then she met with Mike and Juliet and I, and we kind of went through it a little bit more. And she she talked about an ordinance for the cemetery commission, but there's statutes that guide the cemetery commission. So we really don't need
right,
an ordinance since it's already taken care of through state statute. So I would say she did the first run through and then I did a lot of the second run through. And then some things like the temporary special events ordinance that we added in here, it had been discussed back in 2003, but it was never put into effect.
Right.
And there's certain groups that think they need to do a temporary event application, but there's nothing written in stone that says who needs to do it and what type of event it's for. So we're trying to give clarification so that people know, okay, if I'm having an event of this size at this
Right.
location, I always need to do this so that we can make sure public safety knows what the information is. Ledgelight has all the information, building official has the information. So, so the Hewitt Farm Committee,
right,
that was the input was created because of the town meeting when the property was accepted.
Right.
So I used the information from that meeting
right.
to help me draft this ordinance.
Okay, I see where you're going. So when you come, some of them are surprising to me, like no one convicted of a felony may become an elected official, et cetera. I mean, as far as I know, we never had something like that, but did that just get picked out of something?
Mike?
So, yeah, I mean, so some of these are what would be considered, in my view and others' views, like best practices. So though we may not have run into a situation, it's a situation we may not want to run into. And so we protect ourselves from, some of these things as a town. And again, these are all up for debate. We don't, that's going to be the point. I don't see the selectmen deciding any of this. Like, I think we, in my opinion anyway, we decide on what we want to see go forward out of these. And then we let the town make a decision on, what they feel is appropriate. But like what you're seeing, these are before you because to me, they at least warrant either discussion or make sense, and then we kind of go from there. So.
Well, and then, and just the Hewitt Farm, I'm glad you explained to me because I always thought it was just there because it came in and everybody voted on it and all of that. So this, I think, is a good idea. And then when I saw the temporary special events, I thought, well, this is coming from us because as you know, we do have a special event thing.
So the Hewitt Farm special events, I think would be separate. This is things at the fairgrounds.
Right.
And those kinds of,
Okay.
so we can talk separately. I didn't do this with Hewitt Farm in mind, so we can
Okay.
look at that
Okay.
application
All right.
separate.
Okay. So I also think that, that some of these things are jumping largely for going, well, I think it's great if we could do it about the 100 signatures for a petition. But can we do that? Are we allowed to do that?
That's legal. I would say some of these, all of this, any decisions we decide we're going to make, and that's why I'm glad we're meeting this month, actually, because if we come to a terms that as a board that we think these make sense, whichever ones we think make sense, then we'll send it to the attorney to say, listen, this is what we want to bring to the people. Please make sure that these are, worded legally and all that. But that one I do know for a fact, after having discussions, is legally appropriate and certainly makes a lot of sense as kind of a stopgap for the fact that we don't have a charter. It'll help kind of make things a little bit easier to manage. So.
Okay, and then there's one in here, and then I'm going to stop because I think I think it's a good start, and I think it's a good thing that we're doing. But it came up, all three of you saw last night, the issue of having things at the Hewitt Farm and liquor. And now, I think that we have something in our record about having liquor other than what's in fact, I think the restaurants have changed how that was working, and it's working differently than anything that was written, I know, previously.
So,
But what I wanted to say is, I think that an event at the Hewitt Farm, depending on some of the things people were very interested in, I think that we should explore whether we could have very tight abilities to have an event. Like, I remember almost at the very beginning, getting somebody to come to us and say, we want to have our wedding here. Well, what can you say?
right. So our current ordinance having to do with alcoholic beverages, it's chapter 3, alcoholic beverages, section 3-1, consumption of alcoholic liquor within public highways, parks, grounds, and beaches. It states that no person shall consume or possess with intent to consume any alcoholic liquor within the limits of public highways, parks, grounds, and beaches of the town of North Stonington.
I know.
So that for the purpose of this, Hewitt Farm is a park.
Right, exactly. So we can't do it.
We would have to change the ordinance.
Right, and I'm wondering, I know that a lot of the things down in the lines and other places like that, and certainly in some of the parks that are for the whole of Connecticut, can have liquor. But I'm talking about liquor that is going to be overseen and only at the times when it is specific for an event. I don't know how the rest of you feel about it, but I think that it would have to be watched, but I'm just throwing it out. I don't know how people would feel about that.
Mike, you're muted.
I saw Bob, you had your hand up, so I have a comment, but go ahead.
Just clarification, so this is a first go around with no one, we're just discussing these. And then it will be put on a future agenda for more discussion and eventually go to a town meeting, correct?
My timeline for this is exactly that, Bob. I would say we would have a more robust discussion on our meeting on the 22nd about this. And I would like to see us having a town meeting. You know, it doesn't mean there won't be another discussion in between that town meeting, but I think towards the end of January, because I want to have a town meeting on this stuff before we get into like the budget and stuff. So whether it's the end of January, early February, whatever. So it's kind of separate. Like I just, the budget's its own its own challenge. So I want to try to take care of some of this, which is a lot of discussion as well. So yes.
Do you have a copy of this posted prior to our meeting on the 22nd for the public to look at 24 hours in advance?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with
So
that.
if they have questions, they'll be able to, like, I went through it quickly and I'm like 50-50 on these things, and I have good reasons why to like something or not like something. And we can discuss that this evening, but I just wanted to, I don't know who's listening out there, make sure that they know that this is just the first go through to see. I mean, the first time I saw these was when I opened up my packet when Bailey sent it. So I think since they're short, we could probably go through them fairly quickly and just do a little feedback and for food for thought. And unless you don't want to do it that way, or do you want us to bring it back on the 22nd, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, I think, we're definitely going to get feedback. So I didn't know how far you guys wanted to go with it tonight. If you want, I can read through them and then, we can certainly entertain feedback. But what I think, and this is my opinion on this, is that what's being put forward here, whether it moves forward exactly as written or in some level of how it's written, I would like to see this stuff before the people. I think these are interesting things, not just interesting, but some of them things that probably need to be addressed based on, whether it's things that we would be concerned about in the future or things that have happened in the past. So I think that regardless of our feelings, unless there's some like super opposition, and of course that's why we're a board, right? We can decide if there's things we don't want to move forward, we can do that. But I mean, I'd love to see, the people's opinion on these, and not just the 10 people that come to our meetings. I'm talking
Right.
about the town to weigh in on it. But it's up to you. I mean, this, we could run through these right now, or if you want to just kind of absorb them yourself.
Well, I just saw some mistakes like on this, if we just look at the new proposed, the second one down, it says anyone convicted of a misdemeanor in the past 10 years may not serve as an elected or appointed official. First of all, I just think people that would have to know what a misdemeanor is. Now, to me, a misdemeanor is nothing like a felony, and it could be so, and I've never had one, nor am I guilty of one, but I could see where a good person who's doing a good job on a board could slip and make a mistake that could be considered a misdemeanor. Now, this says 10 years. Look at the very next paragraph. It said if someone was found guilty of a misdemeanor while they're in office, they would resign. It says, the wording's wrong. It says they will either resign or must be reelected the next following election. Well, if they're being elected the next following election, then 10 years hasn't gone by since they were found to have a misdemeanor. So those two contradict each other in years. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah.
So, and I'm thinking too, if we're working on a code of ethics and possibly appointing a board, some sort of a board or a hearing board for ethics, then maybe someone's found guilty of a misdemeanor would then go in front of the board of the code of ethics board. So those are the kind of questions I had. As far as terms of the board of finance, that was fine. There was one that said an elected or appointed official who misses 3 consecutive meetings without excuses may be removed from the board with a majority vote. Well, I think I would say yes if it was appointed, but no if it was elected. So I think we have to distinguish between elected person and appointed. If we're appointing somebody and then I go into meetings, we can easily out they go. I would hope we could do that. But if they're elected by the public, I think it's a little bit tougher to remove somebody. I know we've tried to do that with other boards, where we've had someone that has been elected that just doesn't come to meetings. And so I think there would be a discussion there. And I won't go through every one of them, but so when I went through them though, there's very few I could say, oh yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. There's a lot I said, well, maybe in this case, but not in that case. If you know what I'm saying?
Can I just say?
Yes.
So with you pointing out the difference between appointed and elected, when I got hired here, there was a member of the Board of Finance who was on the Board of Finance that I, to this day, still have not met. He never attended a meeting the entire time, and then decided to step down. But that kind of tied up the rest of the board. They couldn't miss a meeting if they legitimately had to miss a meeting because he wasn't able to fill their seat for them. So if you're being elected to a position, you're saying you're actually going to commit to that position. So if they're actively not coming and not telling anyone they're not coming, why should they still be able to take up that seat when there's other people who are very interested in serving, who are going to make a commitment and actually come?
So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I agree because I know exactly the situation you're talking about. There's actually a couple of boards now that have a similar situation. But all I'm saying is we might want to treat an elected official different than an appointed. Maybe it's 3 meetings for appointed and 5 for elected. It just, when you've been elected by the public, it has a little bit more weight than if you've been appointed by the Board of Selectmen, if you ask me.
I think that's a fair point, Bob. And I think all of these that are listed here, like there might be some tweaking that needs to happen. So maybe what I would suggest that we do individually, if you have some changes that you'd like to suggest, and actually, Bob, all your changes make a lot of sense to me. And I understand the contradiction between those two. Again, these are just kind of drafts, and that's literally draft for discussion purposes for us only right now. Maybe just shoot your recommendations over to Bailey, and we can kind of compile those for our meeting on the 22nd. So like what you said about maybe it's longer absences for elected, put something in writing that we could consider when we discuss it next time. Or The other thing that you talked about, with the code, the conduct, code of ethics, Paul, I think that all makes a lot of sense. I think these are just things to just address in some way. And by bringing them for a potential ordinance discussion is a great way to do it, because then the entire town gets to, have a seat at the table and talk about them.
So I can take the same form that was sent to me in the packet, save it, and I can put my answers right on it, or my questions right on it, and send it back to Bailey, if that's.
Yeah, do that. And then we can just discuss it as a group, that'd be perfect. Nita, did you want to discuss any more about it, or just do the same thing for our next meeting?
Well, yes, I will do the same thing, but you didn't answer, nobody answered whether you would consider liquor at some point in time.
I think we should consider it. Like, we should consider changing that ordinance as well to at least for Hewitt Farm. I mean, I can understand why other areas, maybe we wouldn't want to change that, but we could make an exemption for Hewitt Farm where there's, like where you have a licensed, person that's, serving or whatever. Like if you have a caterer or something like that, I can see that.
What we can do is there's a subsection, so that the item I read was B, under that is C, which refers specifically to the restaurant and patio at 386 Norwich Wesley Road. We can add a D that refers specifically to events at the Hewitt Farm property.
That's, and I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but you're right. That would be a positive thing, except ours would need to be very much of a, when you're having the event, it's written down what's going to happen, and it's a responsible, it needs to be responsible. And if you're uncomfortable with it, you don't do it.
All right, Bob, did you have any other comments or anything?
No, that was it for now. I mean, I'd rather write them down, send them to Bailey, and then we can discuss them.
Yeah, so I think just, for our own discussion, again, this was the most like bare bones kind of draft, just like initial swipe at something that, I think if you guys send your feedback, we'll put something a little more substantial together. And then absolutely, I think we could, put that out there for the public, so they can also weigh in on this. I think a couple of meetings to have public feedback would be great. And ultimately to get, something to the actual full public legislative body to weigh in on would be wonderful. So if there's no other comments from the select, go ahead, Nita.
Would you be comfortable also with any conversations about how long people stay in their job, and the other thing that you mentioned about people being in more than one committee? Are those things that we want to talk about too in this?
I think Bob just mentioned that as something he had heard about in the code of ethics discussion. I think it'll all be discussed probably at our next meeting. So yeah, I don't know if there's an ordinance requirement on something like that, but maybe I think some of the stuff Bob will probably put together will lead us into further discussion. So I think that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Christine.
For going back to the alcohol, it was voted on at the December 15th, 2010 meeting
Right.
about Hewitt Farm. So I'm just going to check with the town attorney about changing something that was voted on at a town meeting.
You would, yeah, I think. Yeah.
I think if we do it at another town meeting, it's fine, but I just want to confirm with
Right.
Attorney Mina.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do that, but we can, we'll run everything by the attorney, before it goes forward for the people's consideration, certainly.
But that did go to Hartford, just so you know. That did go to Hartford.
I'm sure it did. It went through North Stonington. That's even harder. So, all right. Let's open up for public comment then, if that's all right. Go ahead, Brett, you're first up.
Hi, everybody. Just listening to the conversation here, I wish that you guys would put this information up on the town website prior to the meetings, like the governor's order asks.
So, Brett, just to be clear, like I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is a draft document that's not required to be issued to the public prior to a meeting. And as we just said in this meeting, We
Yeah.
we will put this out once it gets to a point where we think it's more solid for public discussion. We want public interaction on this, but the boards do have privilege on draft documentation. Just want to make sure I'm clear about that.
I understand that, but the governor's orders talks about anything being discussed at the meeting. If you have that information 24 hours in advance, so the public can look through it as you guys talk about it. And we talk about transparency. That's being transparent. That way people can follow along.
Yeah, there's executive privilege as it relates to draft documentation, Brett. We follow the rules. So go ahead,
Okay.
though. Thank you.
All right. I would ask that something to this magnitude be held off until we can actually have a real town meeting with people in attendance, because not everyone can attend these meetings over Zoom and by the phone. I met with our first selectman that served almost 30 years in town yesterday, and he can't make it to these meetings because of phone issues and staying on the phone for that long and hearing everything. He can't wait until he can come to a public meeting again. And these are the foundations of our government. You're trying to change ordinances. If we try to change these ordinances without everyone being able to attend that wants to, and whether it's a combination of Zoom and in person, I think you're violating the people's rights of this town by doing so.
So I think you're leading yourself to a conclusion, Brett. That's not the case. I think I stated it very clearly. This would definitely go to some level of a meeting where the people would have a great opportunity. And I would love to see public, a hybrid of both in person, potentially, depending on what the public health status is. But that would be my intention, so that we have the ability to be both online or in person. So
right, we meant to do it in January before the budget, and realistically, I don't know if that could happen. And if it can't happen, I'm asking the 3 selectmen to then push that further down the line until it can happen. Because first of all, some of these ordinances that you're talking about are definitely violate some of the state laws. The state law already has. There's a law about felons serving in public office and what they have to do to be able to serve in public office. And the big one about trying to remove someone from public office, you actually don't have the authority. It's gone to the Supreme Court. So you might try to come up with these ordinances, you might have a ruling, but the Supreme Court has weighed in on it. And actually in Connecticut, it is not allowed. And for instance,
so everything we're talking about, Brett, is going to go to the attorney. We have ideas, and certainly if it's not a legal ordinance, it's certainly not going to make it before the people. So I don't think you have anything to be concerned about there. But
I'm just trying to give you a little insight, because even on the Republican town committee, technically a Republican committee is you're elected by Republicans. The state made us change our bylaws, because we did have that ordinance. We did have that in there, that if you missed 3 consecutive meetings, you were out. The state made us change that. The state government made us change that, because elected officials you can't remove based on attendance, or actually a lot of things you can't remove, especially the misdemeanor thing. I think you should allow the public to vote on who they want to, and it's up to the electoral body to decide. I think
you're going to have plenty of time to comment on all this, Brett, and certainly this will go to the attorneys in advance. Just, we're not going to put anything forward that's not legal or appropriate. And I know there's a lot of folks that have a lot of what they feel is legal experience in the community. We will certainly go through the town attorney to make sure that everything that we put forward is appropriate. So thank you.
I'm not done.
No, go ahead. Continue.
I'm wondering why some of these, or what the intent is to be overreaching when it comes to some of these ordinances, especially on the elected official side of things. Why are we looking to put misdemeanors in, felonies in, when there are state things? Why are we trying to overreach and regulate more than we really need to in this town?
Yeah, Brett, I'm not a lawyer, so I think what this is just a general discussion, and I know you have your opinions about these things, and there's a lot of people in town that have opinions, and we can't wait to hear from all of them. So, I don't think there's any overreaching here. It's just a matter of having a conversation And we'll look forward to having those conversations with the public when we have something more substantive to go over. So
I look forward to that too, and I appreciate your time. But like I said, I really would hope that you guys, no matter what, push it to a time when you can have in-person meetings and not change the bylaws and the guidance of government before that can happen. Thank you.
appreciate your comments, Brett. Thanks. Sean Murphy.
Yes, I guess my comments parallel Brett's comments. I don't think there's any urgency for some of these new ordinances or fixes to previous ordinances. In that, I think that, and you say the townspeople will have a chance to weigh in. I'd like the selectmen to take it one step further, not just that the public have a chance to weigh in, but that this doesn't go through until we could have a in-person town meeting where the townspeople vote, not just the Board of Selectmen. I just don't see the urgency in this.
Just to let you know, that's at least my intention. I don't think we were clear about that. Yeah.
I've heard this before, Mike, in that your intention was the people to be able to vote on the budget. And we know that didn't happen. I'm saying that there's no urgency in this, and the selectmen should commit to not moving forward on it until people can attend in person and vote in person.
Great.
I don't care what your intent is. It ain't going to happen in January.
Sean, excuse me, Sean, with a little bit of respect, if you could, I didn't make the decision on the budget, nor did the Board of Selectmen, nor did the Board of Finance. The governor set forth an order that we were forced to follow. So yes, my intention might have been whatever it was, but I'm not the governor. So, I mean, I don't have any power over governor's executive orders. So my intention is absolutely what was stated very clearly here. And this is something we definitely do have more control over. This is not something that the governor has given us any sort of, order on or anything like that. So that was out of our control, just to be clear. I'm sorry, Sean, I thought you were done. If you're not done, just re-raise your hand and you can come back on. My apologies. Yeah, go ahead. You just have to unmute. You would just have to unmute yourself.
There were other options at the budget time. You weren't required to act on it the way it happened. But again, there's no urgency in these ordinance changes. And as far as not posting these for the public because they're considered drafts, there's a stipulation in that is drafts when it's determined in the best interest that they not be made public. And I don't think that there's any reason that these drafts should be held in secrecy from the public and should be posted right along with the you sent these out to the selectmen. Why weren't they in the package that was posted online?
Thank you for that, Sean, and we will certainly make.
Why weren't they in the package that was posted online?
The
Thanks.
executive order that Brett keeps referencing, it specifically says any materials relevant to matters on the agenda, including but not limited to materials related to specific applications. There are no applications that we are dealing with. It relates mostly to planning and zoning and land use matters. I understand everyone's concerned with this, but we've had the town attorney on multiple times and he has not said that we are violating this executive order. Thank you.
It's a FOI act that I was referring to.
So
the governor's order doesn't.
We're attempting to have we're attempting to have as much public feedback as possible. We are being extremely transparent in saying that we are having an initial discussion. And I'm going to I just want to be very clear. I won't be bullied out of not bringing things forward that I think are potentially helpful to the town. I know we have a lot of people who would like to be the attorneys for the town. We're the leadership of the town, and if there are things that should be brought forward in a manner that is legal, appropriate, and acceptable, that's what we're going to continue to do. And certainly this will all be released and we're not hiding anything at all. We're trying to do the business of the town as best we can. So I understand some of these things will be difficult or potentially controversial issues, but just because something is controversial does not mean that it won't be brought up by this board. And certainly by me. I didn't take this job because it was easy. So I appreciate the comments. Joe, you're recognized.
Yes, Bob, this is my comment to you. You mentioned the elected official, the concern on that. Would you mind if I gave you a hand and I went through some state statute to see if they had anything regarding that, elected officials being removed?
You can make your comments, Joe, as just as like everyone else would, and we'd be happy to take that. And any information you have is great. We'll defer to the town attorney on legal guidance like we do. But certainly I welcome any of your feedback as we always do, Joe, and thank you for your interest in helping the town. You all set?
Yeah, most certainly.
Thanks, Joe. Brian, you're recognized.
Yeah, I every time I hear about the Hewitt property, I always get interested in it because I think it's a great piece of property. And this is the second time I've heard about people wanting weddings there, which is fine. But and it always comes down to the alcohol. I know when the original rules for the Hewitt property was set up, there was going to be no alcohol. But then Bon Appetit needed that rule amended or whatever, and there was quite a lot of discussion on that. In fact, I think we had 2 town meetings on it. And the big thing is, people can get married, I'm sure, at the Hewitt property, and they could have their reception somewhere else. I hate to see, and I think I said this before, I hate to see it become just a wedding venue farm, because we got businesses in town that can do the weddings on some beautiful property, just like the Hewitt property. And I think that's an important part of even thinking of having alcohol go on there, because once you allow alcohol on that part, who's gonna, then you run into who's gonna govern it, who's gonna, it's just, I hate to see it turn into a big thing like that. Whereas, like I say, there's other farms, there's other businesses in town that is part of their business to have weddings with alcohol and everything at it. And I hate to see the town get involved in that. I just thought I'd bring that up, but I really like, I'm not sure exactly where the ruling is that we got from Bon Appetit when that was going through, but I'm sure it's somewhere in our archives. So I think that's a good place. I just wanted to remind you, because I know it's sometimes people don't see it, they forget about it, and they think it's all new. Anyways, that's my only comment. And I do, me, I always love to be part of a good discussion. Thanks.
All right, thank you for your feedback. Appreciate it. So what we'll do is, obviously, I know that there's interest. And I knew when we started discussing this, there would be some absolute interest and certainly opinions on these, and we welcome that and want that to be the case. This is not any of these ordinances, I think, that we talk about. These are not decisions for myself, or in my opinion, for the Board of Selectmen. I think we would bring these forward for the people to vote on it in some fashion or another, as a legislative body. I would just ask those on the call if they could just be patient, and we will release the a cleaned up version of these based on this commentary prior to our next meeting. If I could have a little bit of patience from the public on that, I would greatly appreciate it. We're not trying to hide anything or anything like that. We're just trying to do board business in a way that's transparent. So with that, I appreciate your patience and allowing us to try to do our jobs as best we can. Yeah, Sean, you have another comment?
Yes, Mike, that the ordinances that you had mentioned about felonies and misdemeanors, and I know you're going to run these by the attorney, but I don't see how they could be legal because you're not even allowed to ask that on a job application anymore in the state of Connecticut. So I don't know how much time you want to put into forwarding that one. It doesn't make sense that somebody could get a job in town without being asked, but it would be a requirement for an elected official not to have a felony conviction or a misdemeanor conviction. So I don't think those will go very far at all.
And that's fine. Then they won't go very far. Thank you for the feedback. I don't think we're going to put anything forward that's not appropriate to put forward. Again, just an exercise in discussion for the Board of Selectmen tonight. So thank you for that comment, Sean.
Thank you.
Hi, Brett.
Hi, it's me again. I just want to reflect back to Christine's comment. And I do take a little offense that Christine is a town employee. She's not an elected official of the town. And the way that she came out regarding the executive order, she didn't read the whole comment. So I can do that if you'd like, but it says, once
Brett,
they did it, in-person meeting requirements.
I wouldn't like it. Thank you. I would like to move on to other agenda items. This is getting off topic now. So I'm going to move forward onto the next agenda item. And that would be the selectmen's budget discussion. So the selectmen were provided with the budget from last year, which you obviously already had. And I think we just wanted to have some general discussion as we kind of move into budget preparations about the selectmen side of it. So Christine, I don't know if you want to lead us through that discussion.
Yep, so as we're getting things together, I will be putting together the majority of the budget in preparation for the January 12th meeting with all the information that comes in from the boards and commissions. So there were a couple areas that I specifically wanted to talk to the selectmen about that are within your purview, just to see if there's things you want me to be incorporating in the budget as I put together the draft. So I specifically wanted to talk about B1, which is the Board of Selectmen department. Just to see if there was anything that you wanted specific information on as I'm putting things together, or anything that you want added or included, just as we're putting it together. One thing in there is we have planned to split out the grant writer position into a new budget line for that department. We think it's working out very well with Craig. He's been able to obtain multiple grants in the short amount of time that he's been working with us. So we want to make sure that since that is a specific position, it has its own specific line item. I didn't tell you guys any of this ahead of time. So if there's anything that you're thinking as we're talking, please just let me know and I'll make sure that I have it together either for our next meeting on the 22nd or incorporate it in the draft budget for the 12th. I also wanted to just ask if there were any employment positions on the town side that you wanted to be evaluating in the budget. There's different things that have been discussed at different times, so I just want to make sure that I have the opportunity to put together any information for you before we get to those discussions, I wanted to remind everyone, we have a 2% contractual increase for our union contracts. So that will be incorporated in the budget that's presented to you on the 12th. And then the only other one I was going to point out today is, as we're looking at B22 Town Hall, we do anticipate adding new line items in there for the expenses for the North Stonington Education Center, 298 Norwich Wesley Road. We feel that that's the most appropriate place to have those expenditures. So it will be new line items within B22, just like Holly Green is in there for the condo fees for formerly our 2 condos, but now just the 1 condo that we have over there. So
And on
were there
that
any-
line, we're gonna get revenue from both, obviously, rentals, which hopefully are gonna come through, but also the cost share from the utilities from the Board of Ed as well, for whatever their share of utilities are, based on the square footage they're using, so.
Yeah, so that'll be an offset in A5. Yes, in A5, the revenue side will show for the rental of the property and the utilities, but we will need to budget for all the utilities and all the maintenance that the town is required to pay for in full, because we have to approve to pay the money. We're being reimbursed on those.
So it's really an open floor discussion for, are there questions the selectmen have, or any direction you want to give to Christine for research? Is there any starting point anything you want to talk about as we kind of prepare for the budget process? Good, Bob.
Well, so I would just say that because of the times we're in, and we know they started to change during the end of the last budget discussion, whether it be with the rec department and just be able to do things during COVID, and not do things we changed. And we just had a reval come up, so that may affect the tax assessor's office. That's over now for another 10 years, unless we do a smaller version, 5 years from now. So I think that some job descriptions, because of COVID, may have changed. We might realize that because we're doing things differently, that not only the job description changed, maybe the need of a particular person in a particular spot might have changed. But I think we should look at, even the highway department may have changed. So with the things they've been asked to do in the last couple of years that they haven't had to do before, or maybe some descriptions have changed. Maybe Donnie would like to reevaluate exactly. And we know in the past they used to, trim trees and fix problems and push snow around. So, but that may not be all they do now. So I think it's just maybe a look within and reevaluate all the town employees and the town employees in the boards or commissions that offer, like the rec department does, offer things to the town, and how has that changed during these times. So I think there's a good chance to reevaluate where we are and maybe come out of this COVID, whatever that happens, in a more efficient, leaner way.
That's good, Bob. I know we talked about this several months ago, where we wanted to bring in the consultant to actually do an assessment, which we ended up not doing after the Board of Finance, elected not to fund that request. I know Christine, myself, and Juliet have taken a lot of time to look at the efficiencies, at least using our own assessment of where we're at. And there will be some changes that we will recommend based on some of those discussions. But I don't think we did too much of an analysis on the highway side. So certainly we can ask Donnie to kind of take a self-assessment there. So I think that's a good point. Look at what we're doing there, and is there an additional need? Are we too heavy in some areas? Certainly stuff we would want to talk about. Nita, did you have any other feedback or anything like that? Any direction that you really are wanting us to take a look at, so we can be more prepared and just make it a little more efficient once we kind of get into the meat of things? Or
Honestly, what I was thinking about when I was listening to you and Bob is that our people have worked very well here, and like almost everybody feels right now, it's tough. And to be analyzing people and what they're doing at this point in time, I kind of feel uncomfortable about that, honestly. We have good people, and they have tried to stick with us, even if they had to be home doing it. I just am not, I have to think more about it, honestly.
I think it's good to think about it. I think you make a good point. In fact, I think there was a comment last night where I heard somebody say something to the effect of the town employees don't understand or feel the bear of the situation. And I kind of resisted commenting, but I can't commend this staff enough for, these are essential workers. They are out here just like everyone else, certainly not those in emergency services or in a hospital setting, but having to deal with public interaction. And, these are trying times, and we never closed. Christine was here every single day, didn't take a day off. Some others work from home. Christine did not. I have to commend the staff, but that doesn't mean we don't have a job to do. I think we do. But how we look at it, I just want to have an efficient budget process this year. What I don't want to have is a million meetings of just wasting our time. Everyone's time is so valuable. I spend so much time on Zoom calls right now. I don't want to spend any more time than I have to on a Zoom call. So I think that's just the reason for discussing it tonight. Is there anything specific? And I think we can, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and there's one other thing that I have to bring up, which is with the quarterly, and that is that I'm not sure when we're going to be able to go back and be in the school with the quarterly per se. So I think we're still okay right now financially because we skipped a whole a whole quarter. But that's probably an issue too. I don't think we really can go into the school and be there working, honestly, because it have to be at night or something like that.
Okay. That's good for discussion as well. So the topic of that we were taking up here was the selectmen's budget. I'd welcome it if the selectmen are done with their commentary, and if Christine is, I'd welcome any public comment on the selectmen's. I see Sean Murphy has his hand up. Sean, you're recognized.
Yeah, you were talking about expenses over at the school for utilities and so forth. It might be a time to actually set up a department for that particular, for those, rather than having utilities come out of one budget, the selectmen budget, and yet the repairs come out of the highway budget. It might be, you might give some thought into making, it a separate department so that you could say, these are all the expenses related to, the leasing the old middle school, high school, whatever. If you have any property management expenses, anything that has to do with that operation could be under one umbrella versus in different places in the budget. Just a thought.
Thank you, Sean. That's a good comment. Appreciate that. Is there any other comments? Yes, Joe Gross. You just have to unmute, Joe.
Yeah, I did.
There you go.
I'm regarding listening to the Board of Finance meetings, and especially the last couple. And I talked to Dan a little bit this morning. I feel that they got a tremendous, we have a big budget sitting in front of us. Of course, Dan said it's $1.25 million. I think it's probably up to about $2 million, a little more. Once you bring in everything that the other town boards have moved over from the past year and that. I happen to have I had a copy of the budget, a transfer request form. And I feel very strong that if the selectmen put in their budget and you feel you're justified on everything you want because they want to come in at a low budget, those items that really should be increased, list it and then document the reason for it. And with that documenting for the reason for your increase or whatever your needs are, that should be giving them the information that they need so that we don't have to keep going back and forth 3, 4, 5 times when we go through the budget process. In other words, I'm saying, like I say in the past, I think the 2 selectmen should be getting an increase. Everybody says no. I should put down why and document exactly why I feel it should be that way. And I'm using that as an example when I'm trying to get across it. Give them the thing, the line, tie it to a line item, it's on the budget, and say, this is where it's going, and this is why we gotta go that way. And they have the information in front of them then. But it's being a new board, like Dan says, and that you get more questions. It goes back 3, 4 times, and we get nowhere with it. That's all I wanted to say on it.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. I just will say that with the use of OpenGov, which we've been using for the last 3 years, I think, that exactly is what does happen. In OpenGov, we add notes, we add descriptions about why an increase or a decrease is justified or whatnot. So that information's all been there for those who would like to review it. And actually it's, public information. So, but we'll continue that. I think that's a good comment. I don't know, at what point we discuss it, but I know, Christine, you wanted to talk about it tonight. I agree that the second and third selectmen pay is not adequate. I understand you guys, would do it for free, but I think we all have to think about the future. And, we don't know who the next people who might be sitting here a year from now could be. And I'm always of the opinion that we want to attract and get, talented people to be able to do this. And I think that that's not, for the work that you guys put in or that someone would put in these positions, I don't think that's adequate. I would like to recommend that we increase that. Technically, I mean, at the bare minimum, I'd like to increase it to 3 times what it is. So I think when you see the budget that I bring forward, because I usually bring the first budget forward and then you guys can talk about it, but you're gonna see an increase in there because I agree with Joe Gross on that. I think we need to be more realistic with the responsibilities of these positions. So Joe, you had another comment? Yeah, I just have to unmute Joe.
I'm unmuting myself.
Yes,
I
sir.
want to thank you for supporting. I've been doing this for years. God, I think that's a tremendous thing that we need, and I think it's got to be looked at all the ends of it. And to have those guys, those selectmen say whether they get an increase or not, that's terrible. That is total terrible. That board's defined it. That should be given based on, and they are very, very I don't want to. It's overdue, way overdue. And I feel very strongly on that. And I thank you for that support on that item. Gosh, I've been trying this for years. Thank you again, Mike.
Well, it's just the first comment, but thank you, Joe. We got a whole litany to go through, but yeah, go ahead, Brian, you're recognized.
Yeah, I agree that second and third selectmen need more than what they get, because I see raises and raises and raises and people getting raises, and that number's stayed stagnant for years. And like you say, if we're gonna have people, I mean, I know the ones that are there now would do it for free, like you say, but that's not right. Not when we hire people out of town, we pay them a lot of money. Let's pay our own people right here, the 3 that we can call, get a hold of, and it's going to have a definite effect on our town. So I agree with that. I agree with Joe on that. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Is there anything else that Well, I mean, we've kind of talked about it, so if there's no other public comment, we can move on to the next item. Okay. The final main item is this village safety concerns update. I just wanted to bring up, we talked after last time, and I think we had kind of settled on putting a temporary stop sign in over here on the village. Donnie was out for a little while. I think it's okay to mention his passing of his mom, so he was out for a week or so, sadly. Anyhow, I talked to him before that, and we really didn't feel that at least I didn't feel having a temporary what we'd have to have there would actually extend on the sidewalk a little further, and I don't think the passability would be acceptable for like ADA passability on the sidewalk. So I'd like to just put in a permanent stop sign there, and it doesn't mean it's permanent like we can't remove it. Like we can put it in a way that if we have to remove it, we can do a little patchwork. And I know it's a beautiful stone, sidewalk. I don't want to ruin it or anything, but I think if we do it right, it'd be an easy fix if we do end up wanting to remove it. I personally think a three-way stop sign there is probably going to be something that, regardless of when we do the speed humps, is not going to be a bad thing to have there. But I just wanted to bring it back only because, we have talked about this as a board. So my intention would be to move forward with, putting the stop sign in, basically a normal stop sign on a pole, like you would see. Go ahead, Nita.
I'm sure you spend some time in Westerly occasionally, and that's where I go sometimes too, to get groceries and all of that sort of thing. And I was driving through it the other day, and as you know, very many of the streets there, which are narrow, like our streets, have the signs where they just basically say that people on their bicycles can take full. If we had something like that, we get an awful lot of bicycles here. That would possibly slow people down.
Yeah, so you're saying you're saying like in Westerly where they've basically painted the bike signs in the road, like, bike travel lane right in the main lanes.
Right.
No, I mean, that's a topic for future discussion. I don't know if people want to see more markers and stuff like that. But it's a good comment.
It just was a surprise to me to think about it, And actually, when you're in Westerly, people are not fast moving around, honestly.
Not really.
Except when she's going home.
All right, so does everybody understand that, what I just explained? Are we okay? Okay. Is there any public comment? Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're putting the sign, but do we allow parking anymore now that the barricades are missing there? Do we allow parking along in front of the brewery?
There's parking available up until there's a sign upon the corner where we kind of cut it off from being parked on the corner because of the blind spot there. But yes, parking is allowed currently, like basically on the bridge, and yes, in front of the brewery.
And have you been in communication with Ron Lewis on it? He's actually got some sort of agreement with the town on use of the parking and the building and so forth. That might be, if you haven't already talked to him, there's certain things that were afforded to him in an agreement that you might look at.
I've talked to Ron a bunch of times. We've been in communication as it relates to some of the safety issues down there, and everybody agrees that there's, I mean, I don't think specifically on this, but when we've talked about the crosswalks and different things that we've done, we've had some pretty constant communication to kind of work together on all this stuff. So
is there a crosswalk there now?
There is a crosswalk there now, yeah.
Okay, I haven't been down that way.
There's a crosswalk across from the brewery right now, yes. Like, so,
So the stop line will be after that?
yeah, I don't want to like try to explain this without a map in front of me, but the stop sign will it'll be a three-way stop, so you can imagine that. So it, you know,
The
we'll do
people
it
will be stopped. The
properly.
people will be stopping in front before they get to the crosswalk?
They will be stopping that crosswalk isn't where this new stop sign is going to be. The crosswalk is crossing Wyosop Road. Like, that's
Okay.
where that crosswalk is. The crosswalk's already there.
Okay, I'll check it out. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome. Any other comments? All right, moving on. We have some minutes.
I will do the approval of minutes if you don't mind, Mike.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's start with the oldest one as we normally do. So on November 23rd, the Town of Snowington Board of Selectmen special meeting, it was a Zoom meeting. I motion to approve those minutes as submitted by Bailey.
Seconded.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we have Town of North Snowington Board of Selectmen meeting on November 24th at 6 PM. I motion to approve those minutes as selected, as submitted by Bailey.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, we have a shorter set of minutes. These are the minutes from the Zoom meeting on December 1st, special North Board of Selectmen meeting, and I motion that we approve them as the minutes were submitted by Bailey.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And the last set, these are a Town of North Snowington Board of Selectmen special meeting, the Zoom meeting on December 3rd, and I motion that we approve these minutes as they were submitted by Bailey.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for